Welcome to this inaugural 1L TestMax 1L workshop, The Art of Synthesis. Many of you came to us through LSAT Max, and we are especially glad to welcome you back. I'm Celeste Pagano-Bowles. I'm the Director of Content and Instruction over at BarMax, which just means I lead a terrific team of very talented people who help other people to pass the bar exam with hopefully the least pain and in the most efficient way possible. That's what we do over at BarMax. And I have Jennifer with me today. Jennifer, you here?
Excuse me, I am. Apparently my voice is not.
Oh, there you are.
Yay. So I am also an instructor, and I help with bar prep and also with 1L tutoring and assistance. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, welcome. So we helped some of you get into law school or the law school of your dreams, and we want to help all of you pass the bar to fulfill your goal to becoming a lawyer. But we also want to help you get through law school and maybe make that process a little bit less stressful. We're very well equipped to do that. Several of us here at BarMax are former law professors ourselves. So I taught legal writing to first-year law students at one law school, then went on and became a doctrinal law professor teaching contracts and real property to first-year students, as well as a variety of upper-level courses. And Jen, you have also worked with 1Ls. We've both done quite a bit of work with 1Ls, yeah?
Yes, indeed. So I similarly have taught legal writing. I've taught criminal law. I've taught remedies. And a big part of my job for over 10 years was helping first-year students kind of do well in law school. So, hey, you've gotten into law school, and how do we help you learn how to read and brief cases? How do we help you outline? How do we help you do well in law school? And then also, how do we close all that? And then also, once folks were getting closer to graduation, helping them do well on the bar exam. So I've been doing that for quite a while now, and then fortunate enough when COVID came along to move over to BarMax. So super excited about that.
So Jennifer, and she was also an assistant dean, associate dean of academic support. So she's a bit on the modest side. I want to let you know she has quite a lot of experience in academic support and helping people get through that first part of law school and then pass the bar. So we're familiar with what you're going through as first-year law students because we went through it ourselves and have guided many classes of students through that same process. So here at TestMax, we've come up with 3 ways that we're going to help you do that, just so you know what's coming. This is the first one of our 1L workshop series. Now, this is a free series, okay? It's available for free. You logged in for free, and we're going to put it on our on the TestMax YouTube page. It's designed to teach some core skills that will help you succeed. And starting with today's session, the art of synthesis. You're often asked to take one principle from several different sources and articulate it and apply it to a new fact pattern. Jennifer will show you how to do that using fine art. It's fabulous. So this series, and this will be one of several coming up, we'll be talking about reading cases, we'll be talking about the preparation that you should be doing for class. These sorts of things we'll do throughout your 1L year. And they will be uploaded to the TestMax YouTube page for later replay. I'm going to go ahead and show you that. The YouTube page is just TestMax. If you look for that, TestMax, you'll find all of our videos. And we have a BarMax playlist that has actually some stuff that would be helpful to you now, but we'll start a playlist just for this 1L workshop series as well. Then the third thing we have is actually this. This is the second thing. This is the app, the 1L app. This is available on a subscription basis. It's obviously the website version you're looking at here. Lots of good resources to help you through your 1L year. So go ahead and download the free version of the app 1L if you want to see if this would be helpful to you. And then third, we also offer tutoring. And tutoring comes in packages. Again, you will be getting tutoring with a former law professor or another very highly qualified instructor, one-on-one, for people who want that extra attention. So that's enough from me. Let us move on now to the art of synthesis. Jennifer?
Okay, this is a little bit interactive. So I am going to be asking some questions. I'm going to be asking you guys to chime in. So I do want you to keep yourselves muted when you're not chiming in. So just kind of get in the habit of staying muted and then unmuting when you're going to answer a question and then muting yourself again. I guess I'll talk a little bit about why I developed this session and like why do I have it? Like, what's the point of it? All of that kind of thing. I took this session and it's based on something that I did when I was, working in law schools with first year students. I like this exercise because I know some of you have already started school and, you've had that like, what are we talking about moment. And some of you are having that moment, you haven't yet started school, right? So this exercise is a good way, I think, to emphasize that synthesis is something that you've been doing since, you were a little kid, and it's not some foreign skill that you're doing especially for law school. Yes, it is something you have to do in law school. Yes, I want you to do well in law school. You have to continue to hone that skill, but it's not entirely brand new, something you've never done before, completely random skill that you've never, experienced. It's something that you've done before. So I'm going to use a non-law school based exercise to show you how this skill that you've already got translates to the law school environment. So with that, let me go ahead and show you our thing here. So I've already welcomed you, so we can go ahead and move to the next slide, which is, again, me sort of emphasizing synthesis and why synthesis is important. So if you will go to the next slide. Yeah, there you go. Sort of saying, this is, like I said, the thing that a lot of law professors say, like, hey, students struggle with this. It's really important, but it's something you've been doing for a long time. So if you will go to the next slide, Celeste, okay. Anybody know, and go ahead and unmute yourselves, call out, and then mute yourselves again. Anybody know what building this is?
Or throw it up there in chat if you want.
Yeah.
It's the Louvre in Paris.
That's exactly what it is. So super famous art museum in Paris. And the reason that I put it up there is we're going to do an exercise centered around art. Now, full disclaimer, I am not an art person, okay? My background before law school was English literature, definitely not an art history major. Do we have any art history majors in, or art artists in our session here today? Oh, Laura's got her hand up. All right, we've got at least one. All right, Laura, you might have a leg up. Okay, so that's not me. And I sort of adapted this session from a colleague of mine, Chris Franklin, who uses something similar to teach synthesis. So we're going to use this from her. So the first session, the first idea, the first, okay, so let me give you the task here. So what I want you to pretend is that we are working as curators at an art museum, probably not the Louvre, right? Because, I don't actually have a background in art. And so probably unlikely I'd get hired there. But I work at some art museum, maybe like, a little art museum in our hometown. And a wealthy donor has donated a couple paintings to us and some money. And the donor has said that we can have this money so long as we continue the donor's collection. And that's all we know. All we know is we have to continue the donor's collection, whatever that means. So we're going to go ahead and start by taking a look at the first painting. And as you're looking at that first painting, just go ahead and start, telling me, what do you notice about this painting? I'm going to take notes as we speak. And in a moment, I'll go ahead and, share screen and show you what our notes said. But for now, go ahead and just tell me, what do you see in that painting? What do you notice?
It's not on the screen right now. Oh, okay.
Oh, I see it. So,
I noticed, my name is Angel. Sorry for the background noise. I noticed that it seems like there's a mother and it's bathing her child.
okay. So a mother bathing her child. Okay. What else?
The subject is painted in soft muted colors, and the background and the foreground are in more deeper concentration.
Okay, that's got to be our art person, right? Yeah, that's it. Was that Laura? Our art. Yeah, see, there you go. See, she's like, gotta like point out that our subject is in the muted colors and the background's in the darker. See, we're lucky to have an artist here with us today. Okay, what else do we notice?
It seems like this is for sure back in the days, for sure, not anything recent.
Okay, I like it. So kind of noticing when this happened. When was it painted? When was it created? I like it, Angel. Well done. Okay, what else?
The light is focused on the subject as well, and in particular, the child. And she's washing his feet or her feet. We don't know if it's a boy or girl.
Okay.
And I noticed that they're both looking down. I don't know if they're both looking down because something happened to the foot, but they're both kind of in similar kind of posture in a way.
Okay.
I see this as really intimate. This is me, Celeste, I'm jumping into, but it's so intimate. It's very close of this woman and her child. It's a private moment. It's a quiet moment.
Yes, it is.
All right. I'm going to say that's good for that painting. Celeste, let's look at this one. What do we notice about this second painting?
The vase is in the same painting as the first one.
All right. So, Laura, I'm going to point out that nobody mentioned the vase in the first painting. You guys didn't think the vase was important in the first painting, but now you're mentioning the vase. That will sometimes happen as you're reading cases as well, right? You read something in a case and you think, oh, it's probably not that important. Then you read a second case and all of a sudden, the importance of a particular fact sort of crystallizes for you as you recognize that, oh, actually that fact is, important. All right, what else?
That kind of tells us the time and place, well, time anyway, of it was before indoor plumbing, obviously. And based on what they're wearing also helps to tell us the time of the era that they were in. So it was definitely a long time ago, but it could be only 100 years ago. I don't know when the artist was alive, so that would be helpful to know.
Nice. So the other thing that our resident artist is picking up on is that both of these paintings were painted by the same person. So both of these paintings were painted by Mary Cassatt, who is an artist who is known for sort of, as Celeste said, painting sort of intimate paintings of women and sort of doing things that women do, right? She painted during a time that a lot of famous artists were men, and she was, you know, this female painter who painted things that women did. What else do we notice about this painting?
The garments are like a similar color, like the woman is still wearing stripes, but in this case, her shirt is down. So I don't know if it's opposite and if she cleaned herself after, or if she's cleaning herself, if it's going backwards and she cleaned herself before she's cleaning her child. And also this one is more, I would say, I'm not an artist, I don't know the correct verbiage, but this one is more cartoonish in a way than as the other one is more realistic. The other one looks like an actual photo.
I would just.
Oh,
I think the second one is more intimate because she doesn't show her face, but like the previous person said, she is half naked, but you don't see her body parts in the, you know, like her chest, but you can tell she's washing as well. And you can see just a tiny reflection of her in the mirror as she probably is washing her face, possibly, or her upper body. I think this one's more intimate than the other one.
And then the vase is still on the floor.
okay. So not on the table or something like that. So one thing that you may notice as you're briefing your cases is how the particular author, and we could say, you know, here maybe we have, we could say something, you know, if we say like, hey, Mary Cassatt was someone who was interested in a particular type of painting, right? She was interested in painting women as they went about sort of their day-to-day lives, sort of doing whatever it was they were doing, right? We could also say, hey, there are certain justices or certain judges who are interested in writing about or thinking about certain judicial issues, right? They might adopt certain theories of judicial interpretation. And so we know when we get one of those kinds of cases, they're going to bring their writing style to or their thinking style to that particular case. Similarly, you know, we can also look at how the analysis of the case is happening, right? So just as earlier, we kind of said, hey, you know, the way that the two paintings are painted is slightly different. When we're briefing a case, we can also look at how is the judge doing his or her analysis? Like, how's that coming together? I also want to point out that I think it was Angel who said, you know, in this instance, hey, she's still wearing stripes. So the garments are similar. She's still wearing stripes. That's important. I also hear you all making some comparisons. You're kind of saying, here are some things that are similar. Here are some things that are different. That right there is the essence of synthesis. That is what it means to do synthesis. is to sit there and say to yourself, what is the same about these cases? What is different about these cases? Is it the facts? Is it the way the court is reasoning? Is it how the judge is approaching this particular case? How is that working? Okay, Celeste, if you will move us to the next one. Okay. What do we notice about this one?
There's a jug in it, and she's pouring water into some type of vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And looks like she might be in a kitchen preparing food. But she's not wearing stripes on her skirt, but she is wearing some type of head garment. So she may be like a servant or a maid. Again, I don't know who painted it or if it's the same artist. This one is more richer in colors. The depth of the blues and then the browns and the just and the yellows just are popping because the background is so light. You can see where the light source is coming from because the window is up there on the left. And so just the one side of her face is shining. So you can't see her whole face. You can infer what the other side looks like, but you really can't see her whole face. At least not on my screen.
So yeah, it is a different painter. Anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak, see or notice anything that hasn't been said yet?
I mean, it's still a woman.
Still a woman.
She's doing a domestic task. I mean, I think, it was said cooking, I think. It looks like milk, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And Jada said that it seems to be like at different times of day and different seasons.
I think what might be similar, besides the fact that it's a woman in all three paintings, this one gives us information about whether or not there's electricity. So, because you can see the light from the lantern as well. So that kind of helps us narrow down that it was before electricity.
Mm-hmm. So
if we're comparing all three.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Margarita points out that this is Vermeer. So it's a different painter. And I love what Margarita is doing here because she's coming back to our question. And our question is, what do we have to do to further the painter's collection? Because that's how we get the money, right? Or the donor's collection, because that's how we get the money. And she says, hey, it doesn't have to be a Cassatt to further the painter's, Lord in heaven, it doesn't have to be a Cassatt to further the donor's collection, right? Apparently, Vermeer counts too. Love that, Margarita. Well done. Yeah. I'm going to push back a little bit, Laura, and I'm going to say, are we sure that that's a lantern?
If I could zoom in, maybe. I can't really tell. I did make an assumption.
Yeah. And just so you know,
it
Laura,
looks like a lantern.
Yeah. And just so you know, this particular painting, obviously, it's a picture of a painting that's then been put on a PowerPoint slide that's now being shared over Zoom, right? So obviously super pretty. or not as clear as it possibly could be. And every time I do it, we always end up in a discussion about, what is that stuff? Is it milk? Is it water? What's the thing on the floor? All this kind of thing. But the reason that I love including it is your professor may do something like that in class as well, right? The professor may say, hey, is there possibly another interpretation to those facts, right? Is that necessarily a lantern, or could it be some kind of a jar that's on a hook, or a pail, or, some other kind of thing, right? Is there another way to interpret those facts? And that doesn't necessarily mean you're wrong, but it does mean that the professor wants you to get in the habit of thinking through both sides of an issue.
Okay.
So good job. You're doing exactly what I want you to do. And, I'm just I guess picking on you because you gave me the opportunity to.
I'm fine with that. That's okay.
Good. Oh, hang on. Don't go to that one yet, please. Okay. So I want to pick up what Margarita was giving us, which is she said, let's start thinking about she was very polite about it, but she very gently said, let's start thinking about how we get the donors' money, for heaven's sakes. So let me ask you that question. What seems to be the rule for whether, we can include a painting in the donor's collection? Like if you had to guess what needed to be in there, what would the rule be?
The obvious is there has to have a woman.
Okay.
And so far she has to be looking down. She can't make eye contact with the observer. Based on the 3 paintings we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
Her eye contact is on the task of what she's performing. So someone else had mentioned domestic tasks, and all 3 were domestic intimate tasks. Well, I'm not sure cooking is intimate, but they're alone in what they're doing for the most part. Washing a baby, washing themselves, and then making food for whoever. But they're alone, basically.
And someone else contributed and said, someone who's doing a domestic work with a basin or with liquid. And I love that. Anybody else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak have something they want to contribute?
It has to be basically not so modern. It's like old fashioned.
Okay.
And I would say like the garments mean a lot as well too. The garments are like probably not striped, but they're striped right there above the elbow, and they're just the garments itself as well too.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I would bring you back to the colors as well, because they're similar in that they're and they're complementary to each other.
All right. So
not harsh. Yeah.
Huh?
And then she has a lot of bread. I don't know if like she's serving herself or caring for somebody, but that's a good amount of loaves right there. So it's going to be somebody, whoever she's serving is going to be maybe a different family. Like someone else said too, maybe she could be like a servant, or either she's, caring for, kids, or it could be at a school or something like that. Just kind of based how the building looks.
Mm-hmm. I like that, Angel. I'm going to put that detail up in our case brief for painting number 3. And I would say, I think that's important But when we're going to synthesize that into an overarching rule for all of our cases, we would want to generalize it. And when we do that, we might want to turn it into, and I liked the anonymous attendee said something about, maybe it's a domestic task, right? We've also got someone who said we've got to have something on the floor and we've got to have a pinned up or conservative hair. Pinned up or conservative hair. Okay. So I'm going to say, let me show you what we've got here and let's see if we can come up with a sentence or two. Whoops.
Sorry, one thing I noticed too is that there's like a straw, looks like an old school backpack in the lantern. I wonder if she's going to travel after for that. For the
Or that she traveled prior to get the ingredients to make the bread.
true.
It might be wheat.
So possibly. Now, what I'm going to say about that, and this is something that happens in real life too with cases, right? Is sometimes, we start making, we want to make sort of reasonable inferences, right? And sort of, we can read into the facts a certain amount. When we reach some point, and there's some point where, you're reading in too much, and it's kind of a Goldilocks thing where, you'll know that it's too much because your professor will be like, that's too much. And you're going to kind of experiment, right? And you're going to say like, hey, maybe she was traveling, and your professor might be like, maybe, but let's focus on this other thing. And as you kind of make those guesses or you make those inferences and your professor gives you that feedback, I want you to kind of pay attention to that, maybe even make a note of it. A lot of times what's going on in class is that your professor is kind of giving you a preview of what she thinks is important, of the kind of inferences she thinks you should be making. And when she does that, I want you to be sure that you're writing that down, right? I would say going from, hey, maybe that lantern is actually a backpack and the backpack means she traveled and, she traveled to get the bread. Like that's probably too many steps. And it's probably too far from our mission, which is what's the rule for inclusion in our collection, right? Let me share our list here. Okay. So we have the potential rule, which is, it's got to have a woman who's looking down, she's performing a task, she's doing some sort of this, and maybe we'll say, actually, let's take that out. Say doing a domestic task with a basin or liquid. It's old-fashioned. Any way that we can make this sound more like a sentence or maybe two sentences.
Doing a task that involves liquid and basins and pitchers. So I don't know. That is a run-on. Sorry. Using a basin and pitcher to carry liquid. Period. Using those items to do a domestic task. Oh, that's a good sentence.
All right. So I've got, let's see, I want to make sure everybody feels comfortable with this. Okay, so our painting has to have a woman alone. She's looking down while doing a domestic task with a basin or liquid of some kind. And there's some sort of an item on the floor. She's wearing old-fashioned garments, possibly striped, and she's got pinned up or conservative hair. Everybody on board with that?
I agree.
Okay, Celeste, would you please show us the next slide? All right, so what do we think? Does this change our potential rule at all?
No,
Why not?
because based on the two sentences, she's doing the same thing and wearing similar clothing in terms of description. The difference is that she's African American, or I'm assuming she's an African American. She's African of descent, and the other women are Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
And you see her feet, you see her whole body, versus in the other pictures. Well, the bathing one, you see her whole body from head to toe, but you don't see her face.
Mm-hmm. So I'm looking in the Q&A, and Margarita pointed out that in the first painting, the woman's not alone. She's got a child there. So does that change our rule at all? Do we want to say, alone or with a child, maybe?
No, because I don't think we should change the rule, because taking care of a small child is a task, domestic task. Men back then didn't care for children. And that's an assumption.
True, but if our rule says that the painting has to have a woman alone, but one of the paintings that the donor collected has two people in it, does that change, should that change our rule?
Yeah.
So maybe we say, right, so the anonymous attendee says the child is the task. So, and by the way, this is something that happens. Sometimes you create an exception to the rule, right? So you can say, a woman alone, unless the other person is a child, right? And now you have an exception to the rule. Or you straight up change the rule, right? So it just has to have a woman. So different ways that you can do that. Some of that's going to depend on how your professor approaches it, but different ways that you can do that. Another anonymous attendee points out that this particular painting, one of the things we said in our rule was that, the paintings were sort of old fashioned, and this is more modern. And so does that part of our rule need to change?
With the colors and how they made it is, of course, more modern, but it's still taking place, I would say, back in the day, because that's not how our washers and dryers look today. And that person is like washing something still, and like with the pipes and.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's still,
Pipes themselves.
Mm-hmm. So what I like
The
that
pipes themselves
Angel
indicate there's plumbing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry.
What I like that Angel is doing here, that's okay. What I like that Angel is doing here is she's looking at that term old fashioned, and she's saying, what's the definition of old fashioned? And you're going to do that sometimes in law school. You're going to say, okay, so battery is the intentional touching of another person. What does intentional mean? Or you're going to say, murder is killing with malice aforethought. What exactly does malice aforethought mean? So it sounds like everybody's pretty happy with our rule. So, our next slide was just kind of saying like, okay, what would our particular rule look like? We've already looked at it. So if you will go to the slide after that one, please. So we have our precedent cases, and I just kind of guessed like what we might say here. So just, be patient with me. So I said, our rule might say something like depict women's relationship to domesticity. Now our rule actually, says, and let me go back to it so I can read it exactly, that it has to have a woman alone or with a child looking down while doing a domestic task with a basin or liquid, and there's an item on the floor. She's wearing old-fashioned garments, possibly striped with pinned up conservative hair, where old-fashioned means simply, not of 2022 time period, right? And you can see how we took those precedent cases and we smooshed them into our that diamond area, and we created a new rule. Okay. That's what you're doing as you're reading and briefing cases, and you're going to class and you're taking notes. And that's the synthesis portion. That's the thing that students can struggle with. The next part, though, is actually applying that to something new. And so one of the things that makes law school difficult is, usually what you do before this, for most undergrad, is that you have, hey, I wanted, why don't you go learn about, I don't know, the history of the, I don't know, Magna Carta, and your professor's like, hey, read the chapter on the Magna Carta, and you go read the chapter on the Magna Carta, and you come to class and you do a quiz on the Magna Carta, and whether or not you did well on the quiz right away. And then, if you have questions about it, she might lecture you about the Magna Carta. You're not going to do that here. Your professor's going to say, go read these 3 cases about false imprisonment, and then figure out what false imprisonment is. And then on the final exam, I'm going to give you a scenario that looks kind of like false imprisonment, and you have to figure out if it's false imprisonment. So just like we looked at, 4 cases of stripy clothing women, and we had to come up with a rule, you're going to look at 3 or 4 cases of false imprisonment, or 3 or 4 cases of battery, or 3 or 4 cases of free speech, or whatever it's going to be. And you're going to have to come up with a rule, and then you're going to have to apply it to an entirely new scenario. So let's look at an entirely new scenario, and let's think about whether we should include this painting. So, and this is Margarita, right? Margarita was like, folks, stay on track. Keep the end game in mind here. Should we, what is the rule? Should we purchase this? And the idea there is, what's the rule? So if our rule is, a woman who's alone or with a child who's doing a domestic task, and there's got to be a picture, and she's wearing conservative clothes, and it's old-fashioned, and her hair is pinned up, do we include this painting? Why or why not?
I think the rule, honestly, is an extensive rule. And I think the basic thing to focus on is how back in the day of this is. And I would say, considering the old fashioned, it still has the old fashioned, it still has, the picture right there. Yes, it's a man now, and then after it's a child, but it's still taking place that it's still back in the day. So if it's old fashioned pictures that they like to simplify on, then I would say this wouldn't be a problem. But with all the extra details in that rule, then it's more heavily just focused on, just a woman.
Mm-hmm. So you and Nicholas both hit on something that's really important, as did Anonymous, right? Which is, why is the rule whatever the rule is, right? So if our rule says a woman who's alone or possibly with a child, can we say, yeah, on the exam, can we say, this doesn't meet the strict definition of the rule, but this should be expanded because reasons? Well, it might depend on why the rule is what the rule is. So if I tell you, hey, like Angel pointed out, the donor was super interested in history and the past and the way that tasks were accomplished in history. That's a pretty good indication that this type of painting might, be a way to further the donor's collection. If, on the other hand, I tell you, and this is something that Anonymous points out, that the donor was, a sociology professor who was very interested, and this was something else that, Jada mentioned as well, that she was interested in the way that women were depicted, and she wanted paintings of females, and every single other painting was of a woman. That is a key part of our rule. Her motivation, her policy seemed to be to include women. And this is about what it, this was her motivation. This was her interest. That the idea that the donor is about having feminine representation, then, hey, maybe that's not something that ends up being included. Alternatively, you might include some other, reason, right? Maybe it's about,
well, they're not doing a task.
Right. Like whether or not it's, if it's workers' rights, right? Is this actually a task? So as you're in class, if you will go to the next slide, I think, Celeste. Slide after this. Yeah, there we go. As you go through your as you go through class, as you look at your writing, you're going to see, as you take notes, as you go through your case briefs, as you go through all of this, you're going to start to see, why is the court reasoning the way that it's reasoning? Why is, this decision happening the way that it's happening? Those things can be used to, help bolster particular arguments, right? They're not necessarily the reason of the argument itself, but they might be a way to help bolster it. So, again, and I just tried to guess what are some things that we might, come up with, right? Like maybe you guys would say, oh, it seems like the value for her was women. And so this doesn't have a woman, we're not including it. Or alternatively, this is about, you could say, on the other hand, maybe it's about workers' rights. And so here, this person isn't working. And so we're not including that. I don't know, right? So you can kind of think about what are the policy reasons and how are you going to bring those in? Will you go back one slide, please, Celeste? So as you're reading your cases, I want you to ask yourself, what is the reasoning that the court is using? What is the sort of policy that they're using as they reach decisions? What is the reasoning and the policy that your professor is delineating as she's discussing those cases? And make sure that you're including that as a little note or a little piece of your synthesis as you're putting those rules together. Laura, I know you have your hand up. What's up?
Oh, no, I had put it earlier about the previous picture of the man at the table. They weren't doing a domestic task. That was my point.
Gotcha.
So let me take my hand down.
Gotcha. So that's basically what I have for you with synthesis. And I just want to, point out again, synthesis is something you've been doing since you were a kid. It's about taking these disparate ideas, putting them together into a unified rule, And then the purpose of law school is then to pull that apart and put it into a unique new fact pattern where you're going to decide whether or not it fits into, that rule that you've created. So in law school, you're going to read some cases. Those cases, once you've read 2 or maybe 3 cases, I want you to hypothesize, what do you think the rule is, right? And remember, Margarita was like, hey, guys, what does the donor, think about here? What does this help further the donor's collection? I want you to be looking at, like Laura pointed out, like, hey, who's the author of this case? Do they have an agenda? Like, what's the way that they've written this? How are they doing their analysis? What are they interested in? I want you to look at the individual facts. Are they similar? Are they different? That was something that Angel pointed out. I want you to think about, is this case here to kind of introduce the rule, or is it here to maybe give us an exception? That was something that Nicholas mentioned, right? And then I want you to also think about, you may have to define certain terms, like we had to do with old-fashioned. What does that actually mean? And at the end of the day, what you want is an overarching rule that puts together all of the things that you read so that you can apply it to a new scenario. Okay, so that's what I have for you on synthesis. Oh, wait, there's something in the Q&A. I want to make sure. Oh, so Angela points out that there were some similarities. And I actually want to follow up on that and just say, Angela, you're 100% right. And I like that you're kind of going through and saying, like, here's all of the parts of the rule that are satisfied in that painting, even if there are some things that are not satisfied. And that's always a good idea. You always do want to say, like, here's some things that are satisfied, even if, we have this problem of, like, this other part might not be. Okay, so with that, I think I'm going to kick it back to Celeste to talk a little bit more about, or to just, actually, no, let me talk about the, if you'll go to the next slide so I can talk just for a second about this part. So, we were talking about synthesis. Synthesis is another way of saying outlining. So in law school, you're going to hear people talking about outlining. What does outlining mean? It's synthesis. That's all it is. So when we talk about our products and we're like, hey, what is this? That outline is the way that we have synthesized something. So, look, I'm going to tell you that you putting it together is obviously the gold standard, but seeing how someone else has put it together, looking at the way that it can be put together, getting a sense of how it might be organized, having just like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be getting out of this, can be so helpful. And it's right there. And then you've got these practice essays that you can use to help, get, kind of get a sense of, like, how would it maybe be tested, right?
Hello.
Oh, I'm
My
sorry.
name is Arthur Miller.
That's
Sorry
okay.
about that. I forgot that it talks if you show the outline.
It's okay. You can
Okay, let me go back here. So
Yeah.
wait, you were just talking about, because I wanted people to see what that outline looked like. And then the practice essays.
Mhm.
Yes, that is really helpful to continue.
Yep. And the little law in a flash, which also has super short hypotheticals, which are great if you just want to practice, like, this is what I think the rule is. Let's see what happens if I try it out. Like, can I do that little bit of analysis there? And then we also have some little case briefs. So if you've done your brief and you're like, I'm a first-year law student, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this brief right or not? Here are some examples of case briefs that you could look at, let's look at Penoyer versus Neff.
This was the one that tormented me the first week of law school. I wasn't sure what civil procedure was about yet, and this case didn't help. And, let's see. And the fox in real property. Did you have that one? We spent like the first 2 weeks just chasing a fox.
Yeah.
They still do that. If not, you're blessed.
So lots of options there. In addition to, if you'll go to the next slide, the, the different tutoring options and all of that kind of thing. So lots of options for support and all of that. We're also going to do some more webinars. So, I keep talking about briefs and I keep talking about, how you're going to take notes and outlining. Hey guys, we're going to do a webinar on all that. So if you're having a moment of, what am I supposed to be doing? Don't worry. We're going to do some webinars on how to do all of that.
More workshops. Yes.
Exactly. That's the word.
Yes, like today. Thank you so much, Jen. You did a terrific job today of taking that skill and applying it in a way that wasn't so intimidating. I thought that was just terrific. I'd never seen this presentation. You had told me about it, so I'm very impressed. Thank you. Look, guys, if you download the free app or go to the webpage for 1L and register for, the free trial, it's a 7-day free trial. You can just jump on and register. testmaxprep.com/1L. Okay. testmaxprep.com/1L. If you go there and you have a general question, you can even click support. I mean, I know support is usually technical support, but I get content questions and they do wend their way to me after a day or two, and I will answer them on a business day. I keep my eye on questions that come in. That's generally our bar prep students, but we know that you have questions, or if you have workshop suggestions or whatever, you can basically reach me or another instructor by hitting the little headset support icon here. These prices are our regular prices for law student tutoring, just for law students. We are thrilled that you came today, and we're so glad to be here and provide you this support. Law school is rough. You're excited now. You'll all be panicking by the end of September, first week of October. People freak out. It's a normal cycle of life, the cycle of life. But you're going to make it, and we're here for you along the way. Good luck.